Exams were coming closer, so life got busy again. महीने बीत रहे और हमारा कोर्स लगभग पूरा हो गया था। फिजिक्स के सिर्फ 2-3 चैप्टर्स ही बचे थे। One of them was electromagnetic fields. मुझे याद है, क्लास में बैठा था, पूरा फोकस लगाकर। The teacher explained how an electric field creates a magnetic field and how a magnetic field in turn creates an electric field. Together, they move forward, perpendicular to each other, what we call an electromagnetic wave. Light itself is the best example, traveling without any medium. I liked physics a lot, so every bit of it pulled me in. उस रात हमें चैप्टर एंड क्वेश्चंस सॉल्व करने को दिए गए। मैं बैठ गया अपनी बुक लेकर। एक समस्या ऑप्टिक्स से थी, क्योंकि लाइट दोनों तरह से पढ़ाई जाती है, एज एन EM वेव and in terms of vision. I began solving it, recalling how the eye works. Light enters, hits the retina, gets converted into electrical signals, and then the brain processes that into an image. और तभी एक थॉट मेरे दिमाग में आया. Let's say I see a red apple. In reality, the pigments of the apple absorb most wavelengths of light and reflect only the red part of the spectrum. That reflected wave enters my eye and I see red. But wait, light itself is just an electromagnetic wave. Just frequencies, just wavelengths. A 700 nanometer electromagnetic wave is just that, a wave. There is no redness in the wave itself. Neurons fire, electrochemical gradients shift, tiny ions flow across membranes. लेकिन इस पूरी फिजिकल प्रोसेस में where is the redness? Redness ना wave में है, and the object, the apple, it doesn't contain redness either, because it literally rejects that wavelength and reflects it away. Not in the neuron that fires. So, where is the redness? It appears only as experience. The mind assigns meaning to the frequency, constructing the perception of red. यही माइंड है जो 700 नैनोमीटर को रेड कहता है और 400 नैनोमीटर को ब्लू. Without the mind, these are just numbers, just vibrations, nothing more. That means there is no color in the outside world. Color is not an objective property of reality. It is a subjective experience generated by the mind. मैंने अपने कमरे के चारों तरफ देखा. Walls, books, clothes, roommates के faces, सब. और महसूस किया कि ये सब out there वैसे नहीं है जैसे मैं सोचता था. ये सब एक मॉडल है, माइंड के अंदर बनाया हुआ एक कंस्ट्रक्टेड वर्जन ऑफ रियलिटी. और जितना मैं सोचता गया उतना ये और डिस्टर्बिंग होता गया. लेट्स से व्हेन आई ईट चॉकलेट, द मॉलिक्यूल्स इन इट ब्रेक डाउन इन माई माउथ. शुगर्स डिसॉल्व, बाइंड टू रिसेप्टर्स ऑन माई टंग, ट्रिगरिंग गस्टेटरी नर्व्स. सिग्नल्स मूव इन टू द ब्रेन, कन्वर्टेड इन टू इलेक्ट्रोकेमिकल फायरिंग. But what is sweetness? Where is it? The molecules themselves are just arrangements of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Or let's take the fragrance of a flower. Tiny volatile molecules drift into the nose, bind to olfactory receptors, sending electric impulses to the brain. But what is fragrance? I don't experience impulse or ion gradient. I experience smell. Always the same riddle. Neurons fire, currents flow, molecules bind, but the felt quality, the taste, the smell, the redness, that cannot be reduced to electrons moving. Science can correlate. When someone sees red, we can scan the brain and show which area lights up. If someone tastes chocolate, we can trace which neurons are firing. But no matter how detailed the scans, no matter how precise the data, they never capture the feeling itself. ये ऐसे है, मैं चॉकलेट को पूरा एटॉमिक लेवल तक तोड़ सकता हूँ, हर केमिकल इक्वेशन समझा सकता हूँ, लेकिन क्या मैं किसी ऐसे इंसान को जिसने कभी चॉकलेट टेस्ट नहीं किया, उसको स्वीटनेस का असली अनुभव दे सकता हूँ? नो, नॉलेज अलोन कैन नॉट जनरेट द टेस्ट. या फिर ऑप्टिक्स, इलेक्ट्रोमैग्नेटिक वेव्स, विजुअल कॉर्टेक्स की पूरी साइंस पढ़ा दूँ किसी ऐसे को जो जन्म से ब्लाइंड है. But can I ever make him experience redness by explaining the science? Experience cannot be reduced to description. American philosopher Thomas Nagel once gave the famous example. You can know everything about how a bat uses sonar, map its brain, record every frequency, but you can never know what it feels like to be a bat. और यही बात बाकी स्पीशीज पर भी लागू होती है. We cannot know what it's like to smell the world as a dog does, with scent layers stacked like colors. We cannot know what it's like to see ultraviolet, as bees do. To us, a petal may look like a plain yellow surface, but to a bee, ultraviolet sensitive photoreceptors reveal intricate landing strip patterns that guide them to nectar. We cannot know what it's like to see infrared frequencies, और पिट वाइपर्स इंफ्रारेड हीट को डायरेक्टली परसीव करता है. Birds too see a world beyond ours. Their eyes can detect ultraviolet markings on feathers, helping them recognize mates and species invisible to us. कभी लोग सोचते हैं टेक्नोलॉजी से हम भी यूवी या इंफ्रारेड देख सकते हैं, लेकिन what we actually see in those devices is not infrared or UV directly. Sensors detect those invisible wavelengths and then translate them into visible ones. It is only a representation. The true first-person experience of infrared or ultraviolet remains forever closed to us. Similarly, waves of compressed and expanded air molecules stream from the sound source into our ear canal. These vibrations move your eardrum, shake the tiny bones, stir the fluid in your cochlea, bend microscopic hair cells, and generate electrical signals. That is the science behind it. But what I hear right now is music. Yet nowhere in the pressure waves is there music. Nowhere in the firing of neurons is there melody. It all began as vibrations, mechanical oscillations of air, and it ends as the movement and exchange of charged particles, ions and electrons. Yet for me, it becomes an experience of sound. And so, the next question naturally arises. What is an experience? From the level of objective observation, through the behavior of fundamental particles, to the inner subjective feeling of experience, there seems to be a vast no man's land. The wave itself has meaning only because we are conscious beings. The music exists only as an experience in my consciousness. Without consciousness, no vibration, no wave, no movement in the universe has meaning. Similarly, let's consider thinking. What is a thought? Objectively, it is again electrical activity, patterns of firing neurons. Yet that activity has meaning only within consciousness. A thought exists as an inner experience because there is a field of awareness, a canvas of consciousness upon which that electrical activity appears and gains meaning. और यहीं से मेरा ध्यान एक सवाल पर लौटता गया. What is consciousness then? Because when I return to the question of suffering again, is it not another kind of experience within consciousness? So, in order to understand human psychological suffering, I must first understand the very nature of consciousness itself. I have also realized that thought can never reveal consciousness, for it exists and gains meaning only because there is a field of consciousness prior to it. Every scientific attempt to observe consciousness from the outside, objectively, ends at the boundary of particles and processes. It can never cross into the realm of felt experience, let alone grasp the canvas of consciousness upon which these experiences are projected. Consciousness is not within the world of phenomena. Rather, the world of phenomena appears within consciousness. और यहीं से मेरा ध्यान बार बार इसी सवाल पर लौटता गया. Sand on a beach, stone on a mountain, matter, cold and unaware. But at some point, this unfeeling matter somehow configured itself in such a way that it no longer simply was. It began to experience. If we accept that consciousness emerges from matter, then a strange question arises. At what point did the dead begin to feel alive? Let's consider the beginning. Hydrogen and helium, the earliest matter formed as the universe began to cool. They knew no joy, no sorrow. They simply were. Electrons circling nuclei, protons bound by the strong force. Then heavier atoms were born in the hearts of stars. Oxygen, carbon, iron, scattered across galaxies by supernovae. Dust clouds, lifeless, drifting. Hydrogen and oxygen, once indifferent, combined to form water, a molecule that would cradle life. Carbon chained itself into endless patterns. Until eventually those patterns pulsed, replicated, adapted. And then, out of this long chain of accidents and necessities, matter began to look back at itself, to not only exist, but to know that it exists. Where in that chain did it happen? At what level of complexity did lifeless matter cross the threshold into awareness? When did electrons, mere points of charge, somehow become part of the taste of sweetness? When did carbon, once star ash, become capable of grief? The unconscious matter arranged itself in such a way that it was no longer satisfied to simply be. It wanted to continue, to move toward what sustains and away from what harms. A configuration of atoms once blind and silent, now strained toward survival. Each one declaring, I am here. I want to remain. This is not a small thing. It is staggering. If consciousness is nothing but an emergent property of complexity, then when matter is arranged in just the right way, it wakes up and then begins to protect its own existence. And here lies the riddle that philosophy and science still struggle with. How could matter that never once felt anything suddenly become the stage on which love, pain, hope, despair, and beauty appear? If it is true that unconscious particles gave rise to awareness, then every laugh, every tear, every joy, every pleasure is nothing but matter, strangely arranged, learning to feel itself. And if that is so, then suffering too is the cost of matter becoming aware. It is the shadow that comes with the gift of experience itself. Isn't this question itself important for a human being? A lion will never ask what is the nature of reality. A dog will never question if colors exist in the world. Evolution has not shaped them to ask such questions. But me, as a human, sitting in a tiny hostel room, yet behind me stood billions of years of struggle. Single cells learning to divide, fish crawling onto land, apes standing upright. And this entire journey gave birth to a species that can ask questions, that can inquire not only about food, safety, shelter, and mating, but also about the very nature of existence. Hence, evolution cannot be only about stronger muscles, sharper claws, or better food gathering. If survival alone were the measure, other species would surpass humans. They possess far superior sensory perception, allowing them to thrive in diverse conditions while maintaining harmony within the ecosystem. We pick up only a minuscule fraction of what is out there, and then the mind constructs a reality. Colors, shapes, sounds, touch, smell, taste. Experiences that are not themselves out there in the world, but arise within us. For instance, we sample a minuscule portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, just 400 nanometers to 700 nanometers, even though it stretches from essentially DC, 0 Hz, to infinity. It is similarly true for each of the senses in human beings. Eagle, vision up to 8 times sharper than humans, can spot prey 3 kilometers away while soaring at great heights. Crocodile. Pressure sensors on its skin detect the tiniest ripples in water caused by nearby movements. Dolphins produce ultrasonic clicks, bursts of sound above 100,000 Hz, far beyond human hearing, and use variations of these clicks and whistles to communicate, almost like a sonic language. For most creatures, life is simple: find food, reproduce, rest, and survive. Their advanced sensory abilities serve these purposes alone. If these needs are met, they are content. A lion does not lie awake at night anxious about tomorrow. A bird does not slip into depression because it could not migrate fast enough. लेकिन इंसान, only survival से हमें चैन नहीं मिलता. Because of the vast mental dimension we carry within us. और शायद हो सकता है एवोल्यूशन सिर्फ सर्वाइवल की ओर नहीं बढ़ रही थी, बल्कि अवेयरनेस की ओर, रियलिटी की गहराई को समझने की ओर. Every other direction that evolution took ended in species whose main focus is using sensory perception only for survival. लेकिन humans के साथ एक radical turn आया. Our brains expanded, not just in size but in complexity, enabling advanced cognitive abilities such as abstract thought, language, planning, and imagination that are largely unique to us. And here lies the paradox. Same faculties that made us special in the mental dimension also brought us new forms of suffering unknown to other animals. Humans are tormented not just by hunger or physical danger, but by their own thoughts, their own negative imagination. Depression, anxiety are born from the weight of our own restless minds. बेचैनी हमें डिसऑनेस्टी, करप्शन, फ्रॉड, एक्सप्लॉयटेशन तक खींच लाई. नेचर से ज़्यादा लेना, जितना नेचर सस्टेन कर सकती है उससे कहीं ज़्यादा लेना. If the root cause of human mental restlessness and inner psychological suffering is not properly addressed, the collapse of natural ecosystems and widespread environmental destruction becomes inevitable, a reality that is already unfolding on a large scale. तो अगर सर्वाइवल को हार्मनी विद नेचर से मापा जाए, तो इंसान एक्चुअली सबसे खराब अडेप्टर साबित हुआ है. एक्चुअली, इफ टुमारो ऑल ह्यूमंस गो एक्सटिंक्ट, द अर्थ विल हील. Forests will regrow. Rivers will run clean again. Animals will flourish. Coral reefs will slowly recover. the balance of ecosystems will return. तो फिर सवाल उठता है, इंसान स्पेशल किस चीज़ में है? Is it this impulse to inquire, unique to us among the roughly 8.7 million species on Earth, that allows humans to turn awareness inward, questioning not only the world, but the very structure of our limited perception, through which a mental construction of the world unfolds? Perception, suffering, mind. ये सवाल कोई रैंडम क्यूरियोसिटी नहीं है. I saw it as the natural flowering of billions of years of effort, my life itself. The same force that shaped wings for birds and fins for fish had now shaped neurons in my head to ask, what is the nature of reality? और अगर लाइफ ने ही हमें ये सवाल पूछने लायक बनाया है, तो इसे इग्नोर करना, इसे दबाना, ये लाइफ की ही फ्लो के खिलाफ जाना है. फाइनल एंट्रेंस एग्जाम हो चुका था, रिजल्ट भी आ गए थे. अब बारी थी हॉस्टल छोड़ने की. बाहर गेट पर पेरेंट्स कार में मेरा इंतज़ार कर रहे थे, मुझे घर ले जाने के लिए. उस दिन मेरे हाथों में बस सामान था, किताबें, कपड़े, छोटे मोटे हॉस्टल के सामान. लेकिन दिल में एक ऐसी खामोशी थी जो शब्दों से भारी थी. It was the responsibility of going to the very root of human suffering, to look directly and without choice into this restless mind that creates both heaven and hell, to discover whether real peace is possible, not as an escape, not as the comfort of belief or the soothing of chemicals, but as the very ground of being itself. For that, I must come upon those people who have understood life beyond the contamination of the conditioned mind, beyond the walls built by memory, by fear, by the very structure of our biology. And at the same time, I must walk beside science, not as one who seeks proof, but as one who seeks to understand from every direction. For truth has no opposite, and understanding must be whole. The questions of my inquiry are the questions that arise when I look within. What is a thought? What is the mind? What is the nature of the self, the center that says I? How does the world appear beyond the narrow perception of a conditioned brain? And why is there anything at all? Why does this universe exist? And why did the universe become aware of itself to experience its own existence? These questions are not philosophical curiosities. They are born of life itself. Because I am alive, I must ask. To see into these questions is not a luxury. It is a responsibility. A responsibility not just to oneself, but also to others.